It's tricky because to talk about some things that would appear to be perhaps advanced or mental in nature about like how the path unfolds over decades may not be so relevant to
What unfolds for decades?
the path, or your experience of spirituality can unfold over decades, over long periods of time. Isn't always relevant. You're talking about you can never know something until you've got to it. So the best it can do for you is just, if you ever come to that stage, if I'm correct, I'm talking about my own experience and assuming from what I've seen that often it's the case for other people. You will just recognize it then and know when a difficult time comes that perhaps, oh, I've heard that before somewhere. I recognize that I'm not going crazy. Because it can happen. Over 30 plus years, I've noticed that the path goes through very strange turns. Things I never ever would have predicted. I thought it was one way and it keeps turning over and it's something completely different. And because often almost all the material you read is about the first stages, then you're almost scared to go beyond it because it makes you think that you're arrogant and people will argue with you or whatever. So, but then you'll begin to notice that some of the more advanced teachers have spoken about these things, and you will begin to hear those things that were just ideas at one time in your life, and then suddenly they become very real. You'll hear something. You'll hear the same talk, and you'll hear something completely different. So, hopefully that's of some value. I don't know.
Stages in a sense that everyone seems to go through these same things. And maybe it's a personal arrogance and I'm fairly young, so my personal path probably hasn't been longer than 5 years.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel, especially here, it feels like I don't go through the same things of these really concrete stages, and there's more of a transience in life.
Yeah, totally.
But I'm wondering why, or if you feel that there are these stages that are necessary to go through?
Well, if I talked about them, I wouldn't say that they're very general. So yes, I would agree they're not necessary. I couldn't say that for sure. All I can recount is my own experience, and yeah, it's important to be open to that. I mean, I've been with teachers who literally got stuck in that same thing. People who, probably the most famous teachers in the world, who then would get to a certain point and then you'd feel that, wow, I get what you're saying, but I'm not you. I have a fundamentally different character. I have a different languaging, and I can't completely import your worldview, and I don't even want to, because that would be a betrayal of me. So yes, you must maintain your respect for your own uniqueness. I agree that's so. The only reason when I say stages, yes, I can't say absolutely that they would be the same, or even that they would be in the same order. I mean, you have to have an appreciation of your own life. I mean, if I look at my life, because I was a bit of a spiritual nut, I did almost everything backwards. Nearly everybody I knew just left school and they just knew, get a job, get money, get everything by a certain age, and then you can retire and all this stuff. That was just all obvious to them. That was completely not obvious to me at all. Like when I got into spirituality, it was like, well, this is first. You do this first. I believed it. There was something resonated in me about that. And so I was reckless about not doing what nearly everybody else did. So yeah, you have to appreciate some people are very purist about their spiritual paths and others are kind of a bit casual. And we have different natures. Some people come to Advaita and it's all an energy experience. Other people are quite intellectual in nature. You really have to shore up your own courage and sense of yourself. I agree, it's totally important, because every path has its own flavor, and like I said before, people will try and tell you that you're wrong. They might hear, like, I guarantee you 4 out of 5 people in this town would hear the fact that I'm using a bunch of words and writing it on a poster, for instance, that I'm just all intellect. That would be their assumption, because they don't recognize that we can have strengths We can have intellectual strengths, we can have feeling strengths, we can just go straight through the energy in the body. And just because you have a nature or even an astrological nature that appears as one rather than the other, or has one at the front, doesn't mean that you're not experiencing the others. So if you find yourself at odds with the people around you and they're telling you that, oh, they think that you're not seeing something in a certain way, then you have to know who you are, basically. Know yourself, and you'll be free. So yeah, your sense of stages are fluid. But the stages I was talking about was I mean, it could even be karmic. They say of Ramana that he was 16 years old and he was just ready. You know, maybe he'd done all this stuff in a past life. So he might not, if I said there were 3 stages, he may never even experience the first 3. And then we may all come to him and think, oh, wow, I want to be on stage 4. And we're just not. We have to go through 1, 2, and 3. Now, I'm not saying that, again, you have to decide whether these stages resonate with you. They're just expression of my experience, and I know some people have done it. The reason why I say it is because very few people talk about such things, so there's a natural inclination of truth, I believe, to gravitate towards anything that's missing. If there's a hole in the way people think about things or understand things, or if a whole bunch of old teachings are just being repeated parrot-like because it's the easiest thing to do, then it's completely important for every time and every person to find their own language and express things in new ways, direct from their own experience, and everybody can be the judge whether it's relevant or meaningful to them. So yeah, particularly that stage of being weaned off bliss is, maybe some people, they're supposed to be in bliss till the day they die. They'll get into a practice, and many practices are talking about that you'll just keep doing it and you'll just get better and better, and then maybe you think you're enlightened. And all I know is that I was as pure about that as anybody I know, and then the opposite happened. So one of those guys could come to, everyone disagrees, as I said, they could come to me and say, well, you did something wrong. And I said, well, that's what I thought at first, but now I can see that it wasn't. It was the next step for me. That somehow knowing had to get into my body without the support of continuous nice experiences. If you can see that and this is not telling you to not, as many teachers will do, and this is not telling you to not have nice experiences. I'm just saying, in my experience, there's a time when they stop, or you get less of them, so that your knowing can handle anything. It's the tough rubber hits the road realization. It's like you don't require anything. It's the fulfillment of that stuff that's in the spiritual language from the very beginning. It doesn't need to be a certain way for you to know the truth. You can live in this life a normal life, complete with suffering, pain, death, aging, and carry it on some level of your being without you having to babysit that into a nice feeling constantly. And you're okay with life, like truly okay with it. That could take 30 years, it could take 5 lifetimes. You don't know, but you can see the trajectory. So I don't claim to have got to the end of the path. I don't claim to be perfect like many teachers are selling themselves as. I just claim to have engaged with the path, thought about it, have a capacity for expressing what I've seen, and to feel that I can see where this leads, what's going on, how it's working. And when that's the opposite of what you're expecting, that can be quite strange. See that?
Well, this is actually what I believe. There is, if you'd like to engage with the world, you're going to have to deal with these feelings, but it's about having done enough work internally to know how to handle them and be okay.
Yeah. And be realistic as well, because many people, even ourselves, will. Oh God, I remember years ago people would say, well, you're a Buddhist. How come you're not acting like the Buddha right now? You know, they expect perfect behavior instantly. You know, but you're human. Your human lot and our collective stuff is so deep. There's just so much crap that's going to come at you. You might experience the same thing over and over again 100 times, and you're just chipping away at it. And it requires great patience, infinite patience. So yeah, to be patient with yourself, that do exactly as what you're saying, but not expect to be perfect. To be kind to yourself through the entire process, and even when you fail, especially when you fail. Because that's funny, many of the people who say that they're on non-intellectual paths, non-mind, quite often they have very simple minds, and in the back they're just like the same of us as most of us. Our default is, we've learned as children to have quite violent self-talk. You know, I'm failing, I did that wrong. We have to see all of that, and part of being kind with ourselves is to be realistic, both within our feelings and our mind, and we can work on both levels, or automatically through the realization of being, and just get real about, you know what, it's cool. Who I am is completely fine, and I'm in a long process. I'm essentially on the right path. That takes an enormous amount of stress and need, and having to go to teachers, and you know, maybe falling at the feet of complete charlatans and so forth. We try everything, and we gradually learn about what not to do.